Dear students, welcome to the today's video class. So anyhow, we have completed the 13th chapter, that is organisms and population. Next we shall jump to the next chapter, that is what we call it as the biodiversity and conservation. So this biodiversity and conservation is chapter number 15, right? Chapter number 14 is ecosystem. ಸೊ ಇಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮನ್ನು ನಾನು ಡ್ರಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ CBSE ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಆ ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಕೊರೋನಾ ಇರೋದರಿಂದ ಆ 14th ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ನ ಡಿಲೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಅದನ್ನು ಪೆಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಇಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅಫಿಷಿಯಲಾಗೆ ನಮಗೆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಬರ್ತದೆ. ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ PU ಬೋರ್ಡ್ನವ್ರು ಏನು ಅಫಿಷಿಯಲಾಗೆ ಇಂತಿಂಥ ಚಾಪ್ಟ್ರು ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದು ಅನೌನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೋ ಆವಾಗ ವಿಲ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು permanently will keep those chapters aside. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲೇನು ಅಂತಂದರೆ ಈ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಡ್ ಟರ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಬಲಿ ಯು ಮೈಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವ್. ಸೊ ಇಫ್ ಯು ಗೋ ಥ್ರೂ ದ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಪೇಪರ್, ಸೊ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ not given some of the questions from some of the chapters. For example, this evolution chapter. So evolution chapter is also deleted. Then strategies for enhancement of food production, adu kuda illa. So hige ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇದರ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ಏನಿದೆಯೋ ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂಸ್ ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಡಿಲೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅಟ್ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ 5 ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಡಿಲೀಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಅದು ಅಫಿಷಿಯಲಿ ಬಂದಾಗ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಈಗ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಏನು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಲ್ಲಿ 3 ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ಗಳನ್ನ ನಾನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಇರಲಿ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎಕಾಲಜಿ ಚಾಪ್ಟ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುವಂಥ 4 ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ 2 ಡಿಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಒಂದು ಎಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮು, ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಎನ್ವಿರಾನ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂಸು. ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ವೈ ವಿಲ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಮೂವ್ ಟುವರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ದಿ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಬಯೋಡೈವರ್ಸಿಟಿ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕನ್ಸರ್ವೇಷನ್. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬಯೋಡೈವರ್ಸಿಟಿ? ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬಯೋಡೈವರ್ಸಿಟಿ? Bio means living organisms. Logos means study. Study with reference to the living organisms is called biology. So here we are having the biodiversity. So means diversity means varieties of the what? Living organisms, right? So in a given area, in a given place, so we cannot observe, we cannot find the occurrence of or the presence of only one type of organism in nature. So if you observe any habitat or any place in this biosphere which is accompanied by varieties of organisms, the place having varieties of organisms is called rich in biodiversity, right? So a place having same type of large number of plants, nodri observe madri ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರುವಂತ ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸ್ ನ, a place which is occupied by same type of or single species with large number, so that will not be called as the rich in biodiversity. So that place is occupied by only one type of species, right? So it is less biodiversity. Whereas when we are going to call a place having rich in biodiversity, a place is occupied by large number of different types of species, different types of plants, different types of animals, different types of microorganisms. Such place is called as, such an habitat is called as rich in biodiversity. So an ecosystem, when we call it as a sustainable ecosystem, so only when it is rich in biodiversity. The place or the habitat which is rich in biodiversity do not have much variation in the ecological parameters. So now last chapter ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ನೋಡಿದ್ವೋ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ, so the whatever the environmental factors or the ecological factors like the temperature, light, then the wind, then water, or that is moisture, that is annual rainfall, atmospheric gases, soil condition. So these are the ecological parameters. So it varies from place to place. But here the place which is having rich in biodiversity has less in the variation in the ecological parameters. So therefore, so biodiversity can be defined as, so it refers to occurrence of different species, different types of species in a given habitat, or place. It is called as biodiversity. So in this biodiversity, we are having different types of biodiversity. What we call it as levels of biodiversity. Andre, so what we are having the different types of the organisms in an ecosystem. So it is because of the three parameters. So andre ಯಾವ್ಯಾವ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಈ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಕಾಣ್ತೀವಿ ಅಥವಾ ಇನ್ ಎನ್ ಎಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಆರ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಬಯೋಸ್ಫಿಯರ್ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್ ಟೈಪ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ different levels of biodiversity. The first one we are having is the what we call it as the genetic biodiversity. So what is this genetic biodiversity? Genetic biodiversity refers to, so because of the occurrence of different type of the genetic material, so that leads to the existence or origin of or the formation of new type of organism. So that is what we call it as the genetic biodiversity. So whatever we are having till today, so it was assumed that so the biosphere contain more than 20 million species. So why we are having different type of the organisms? It is because of the difference in the genetic constituent of an organism, right? So because of the variation or changes or the difference which is found in the living organisms, so we are having the different types of the organisms. So that is what we call it as the genetic biodiversity. And the second one is what we call it as species diversity. So what is this species biodiversity? Species biodiversity, right? So here in the last case, so because of the changes that has been found in the genetic material that led to the occurrence of different kinds of organisms, right? So any place having different kinds of organisms is referred as rich in biodiversity, or the place with diversified life forms. Diversified life form means different type of living organisms. So here, so each and every species has its own genetic constituent, as we have studied in the molecular biology or genetics chapter, right? So each and every organism has its own genetic constituent. For example, so this genetic constituent, that is DNA, which will going to form the what we call it as the chromosomes. So if we observe the number of chromosomes that are present among the different plants, among the different animals, will be different, isn't it? So each and every plant species has its own chromosome number. So here, so species diversity means, so because of the difference in the genetic constituent that led the presence or origin of or the formation of different type of the species. So evolution chapter alli ನಾವು ನೋಡಿದೀವಿ ಹೌದಾ. So whenever the changes that occur in the genetic material either by a natural process or by the induced event, right? For example, exposure to the mutagens or the ultraviolet rays like X-rays, right? So we find the change in the genetic material. So because of that, so there is the cause for the origin of new species. So here also the occurrence of different type of the species in a given habitat is called as species biodiversity. And the third one is the ecological biodiversity. So what is this ecological biodiversity? Ecological biodiversity refers to in a biosphere. So biosphere is the place where the life forms are found or living organisms are present. That includes hydrosphere, lithosphere and atmosphere. So in these three places we find different type of ecosystems. For example, we have the aquatic ecosystem and terrestrial ecosystem. In an aquatic ecosystem, we are having the lotic ecosystem and lentic ecosystem. In a terrestrial ecosystem, we are having the grassland ecosystem, forest ecosystem. Then in the forest ecosystem, we are having once again subtypes. So evergreen forest, then tropical forest, temperate forest. So in a biosphere, because of the changes or variations that are present, that are found in the ecological parameters, so that led to the existence of different type of the ecosystems. So such is called the ecological biodiversity. Right? So these are the different levels of biodiversity. So because of the presence of or variations that are found in the genetic material that led to the development or formation of different type of species. So because of the development of different species, we are having different type of populations. So these different type of populations will constitute a community. So we do not find the same type of the community in the entire biosphere, right? So in the globe or in the entire biosphere, we find different type of communities, right? So different type of communities occur because of the difference in the ecological parameters of that place or habitat, right? So these are the three different types of the or levels of biodiversity. Just one marking definitions na keltare ashte. So what is genetic biodiversity? So occurrence of different difference in the genetic material is called genetic biodiversity. What is species diversity? So presence or occurrence of different type of species in an ecosystem is called the species biodiversity. Ecological biodiversity, presence of different type of the ecosystems in the biosphere, right? So idi ಏನು biosphere ಅಲ್ಲಿ we do not find the same type of genetic constituent. We are having different types of genetic constituent. So it is called genetic biodiversity. In a biosphere, we do not find same type of species. We find different type of species. It is called species biodiversity. In the biosphere, we do not find only one type of community or one type of ecosystem. We are having different types of ecosystem with different types of communities. So that is called ecological biodiversity. So if we analyze the global biodiversity, right? So why we need to study this biodiversity? Because so biodiversity constitute occurrence of varieties of organisms. In an ecosystem, whatever the different type of the organisms that are present, they coordinate with each other. They live with ಕೋಆಪರೇಷನ್. ನಾನು ನಿಮಗೆ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟ್ರಲ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಎಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮು ಐಸೋಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಆಗಿ, ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ, ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ ಆಗಿ ಬದುಕೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಈಚ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ಈಸ್ ಸೊ dependent on one another for the sake of some requirements or to fulfill their requirements, right? So that is what we call it as the coordination and cooperation. So adik sambandhavage ನಾವು last chapter ಅಲ್ಲಿ we have studied, so what are the different kinds of organisms interactions. We discussed the predation, parasitism, then mutualism, amensalism. So isn't it? So different types of the what we call it as organisms interactions. So why we have to study? Because so in an ecosystem, in the biosphere, so each and every organism is most important. So we are not supposed to neglect any organism that is present in the biosphere. ಸೊ ನಾವೇನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಂದರೆ, ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫಿಶ್ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್, ಸೆಲ್ಫಿಶ್ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ ಬಯೋಸ್ಪಿಯರ್. ಸೊ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಹಿಸ್ ಸರ್ವೈವಲ್, ಸೊ ಹಿ ಈಸ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟರ್ಬಿಂಗ್ ದಿ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ಕಾಂಪೊನೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಆರ್ ಪ್ರೆಸೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ ದಿ biosphere. So ultimately, after so many years, so the nature will reflect. So it will cause and what we call it as the nature will get revolt on the man, right? So then only the man will come to know that so the main cause is myself. So it is all because of my activity. ನೀವೀಗೆಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ, ಸೊ ಅರ್ಥ್ಕ್ವೇಕ್ಸು, ವಾಲ್ಕೆನೋಸು, ಇವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ನೋಡಿ, ಫ್ಲಡ್ಸ್ಗಳು. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಮ್ಯಾನ್. So man is changing the biosphere or ecosystem for his sake, right? So once the ecosystem components were altered, so definitely the ecosystem will get destabilized, right? So that's why in order to have the knowledge regarding the importance of the living organisms that are present in the ecosystem. ಸೊ ಇಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮಲ್ಲಿ ಅಥವಾ ಬಯೋಸ್ಪಿಯರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂಥ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ಜೀವಿಗಳ ಒಂದು ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆನ್ಸನ್ನು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾವು ಈ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ನ ಓದ್ತೀವಿ, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ನ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಏನು, ಸೊ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ನ ಕಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ನಮಗೇನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲದನ್ನು ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಓದ್ತೀವಿ, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಸಿ ದಿ ಗ್ಲೋಬಲ್ ಬಯೋಡೈವರ್ಸಿಟಿ. ದಟ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್, so in this world biosphere, in the total world, so in the biosphere, so we are having varieties of organisms, right? So which constitute the animals, among the animals, invertebrates and vertebrates, and then plants. So among these invertebrates we are having so many different type of the animals. Among the vertebrates also we are having the different type of the animals. So among the plants also we are having the different type of the plants. So if we observe in the entire globe, right? So in this globe, among the invertebrates, right? So the dominated animal is the insects. So insects constitute nearly about 70% of the total living organism. Among the living organisms, so insect constitute 70%. So such a huge population, such a huge different types of the insects are found, right? That means out of the 10 animals were identified, among them 7 are insects, means different type of the insects, right? So among the invertebrate also, so where the much of the different type of the invertebrates which is dominated by insects, then the next mollusks, then crustaceans, then other animal groups, right? So more than 70%, nearly 70 to 75% among the invertebrates was occupied by the different type of the insects. And so among the mollusks we find different type of the mollusks and crustaceans. Then so if we observe among the vertebrates, so nearly about 50%, almost 48 to 50%, we find different type of the fishes. Then so the remaining part which is occupied by the mammals, birds, reptiles and amphibians. Then among these plants, so among the plants much we find different type of the fungi. In addition to that, it is also dominated with the angiosperms, right? So among the invertebrates, the dominating group is insects. Among the vertebrates, the dominating group is fishes. Among the plants, the dominating group is fungi and angiosperms. So if we look at in the biodiversity of the in India, right? So in case of the biodiversity, whatever the global area, so India contribute about 2%, 2.4% of total world area. So ಏನು area ಇದೆಯೋ, so in that area the India constitute nearly about 2.4%, right? So in this place, in this habitat or in this area, so India contribute about 8.1% of different types of species means nearly about 8.1% of the organisms are endemic to India. So because of this, right, having only it is area wise, the India is occupying only a land or area of only 2.4%. But if we look at the presence of the organisms, or if we look at the biodiversity, so India is rich in biodiversity as it contribute about 8.1%, right? So therefore, so it is called as rich in biodiversity. So here in India India contribute nearly about 45,000 species of plants, and then nearly about 90,000 species of animals. So this is the contribution of the India to the world or global biodiversity, right? So nearly about 45,000 species of the plants are endemic to India, and nearly about 90,000 animals are endemic to India. So here in the entire globe, right, based on the richness in the biodiversity, so the total globe has been divided into 12 mega biodiversity centers, right? So what are mega biodiversity centers? So these are the large area which cover large area, which occupy large area rich in biodiversity. Such areas are referred as mega biodiversity centers. Based on their richness in the biodiversity of the species, so in the entire world, so there has been identified or recognized 12 mega biodiversity centers, right? So among those 12 mega biodiversity centers, India is also one of the mega biodiversity center. Why? Because it is rich in biodiversity. How much? It contributes nearly about 8.1% to the total global biodiversity, right? So these are the some of the aspects. So keep it in your mind, the introductory aspects. In the next video classes, we will discuss the other aspects that is related to this biodiversity. Okay, thank you.